Remember that bit I did about how Bloodborne needs a cheat mode? Yeah, I was wrong. Shut up, me. There already is an easy mode. It's cleverly disguised as spend all your blood echoes on vitality and summon other players for boss fights. I was gifted Dark Souls 3 for Christmas and got really into it, which made me realise that I wasn't actually burned out on this style of gameplay. It was just that Dark Souls 2 is a big pile of shit. So after that I wondered if I ought to repurchase Bloodborne. Conveniently, it was on sale, so I did, and I'm loving it. It turns out that when you're going through frustrated and unhappy times at work, you don't necessarily want to come back home to an arduous, challenging, oppressive video game like Bloodborne. Now that work is in better shape, touch wood, I'm more than up for the challenge of a game like this again. Now that brings me to my larger point, which is to condescendingly ask you once more not to completely dismiss games if you don't like them straight away. The fact is, if a game is popular, it has merit even if you can't perceive it or it doesn't appeal to you. You've got to keep giving these things a go even if you don't dig it first, second, even third time. It took me 4 distinct attempts to enjoy Dark Souls 1 and it finally clicked when the bell gargoyles succumbed that 4th go around. Now I love it, in fact I'm totally back on my bullshit. I've reinstalled Dark Souls 1 and 2 as well as Demon's Souls and I'm playing them all at the same time. I'm excited to pick up the recently announced remastered version on PS4. I'm seriously considering buying a Dark Souls t-shirt. I picked up Breath of the Wild recently and I can't get into it at all. I've really tried but I just don't like it that much. Rather than giving up, I'll just come back to it later and see if it clicks with me. See if I like it now, you know? Maybe I'm just in the mood for something a bit more structured right now. Every year or so I try and play another RTS. I hate them all, but one day I will find one that I like and it will be a gateway into another genre of gaming possibilities. I do like Defense Grid, but I'm pretty sure that doesn't count. Be like me, Stu. Be like a man who intentionally plays things he doesn't like. The original release of Devil May Cry 5 on the PS4 had an arse removed from it using bright light. After mass gamer outcry, they patched back in the arse and now you can see an arse. Look, if you want to see a girl's arse, just go on Google and search for girls' arses. Look, just search for girls' arses on Google, for fuck's sake. Before I even start, I want to make it clear that I understand that indie games is a nebulous term applying to a spectacularly broad spectrum of experiences. Bigger budget console stuff, big banner Steam titles, small scale Steam titles, itch.io stuff, obscure games even beyond that, fan-made games, click-and-play games, basic programs, Doom on a calculator, Doom on a printer. Indie games is one of the stupidest phrases ever, but for the purposes of this hardline investigative journalism, let's assume I mean the most broadly understood definition of indie games, Steam stuff that isn't published by Capcom or Bethesda. Here goes. Indie games seem to have a real problem with identity, like a real lack of confidence. Everything's in extreme debt to another game, and that other game tends to be Dark Souls, NetHack, or Symphony of the Night, or all three like Dead Cells. And that's fine, the point of this isn't to say that these games are bad. Dead Cells is incredibly promising, but it's getting a bit exhausting seeing the phrase, with roguelike elements, on every new game's PR. I've started to automatically translate it in my head to, with uninteresting level design, even though that isn't always the case. I realise the irony in someone whose actual literal favourite game of all time is The Binding of Isaac, criticising roguelike elements, but there are shades of grey. For every Isaac there's something tiresome like Rogue Legacy, drawing the player in with a compulsive unlockable system before abandoning all meaningful progression for iterative stat boosts, or something point missing like Enter the Gungeon, which is basically the same as Isaac, but with horrendous pacing. Rogue Legacy uses the roguelike stuff as a crutch to make up for what is extremely pedestrian level design. Gungeon would actually be fun with a bit of more balancing, but as it stands I feel like they've missed the mark as far as nailing that compulsive one more go feeling. The game is just too punishing, too lengthy. A patch could fix it. It's a very delicate balance. Anyway, that covers the roguelike side to some degree. Let's talk Metroidvanias. I'm sick of them. 10 years ago I couldn't get enough and eagerly swallowed garbage like Monster Tales, such was my thirst. Now you can't move for the bastards, with hideously bland examples of the genre praised to the skies, such as the near monochrome definition of style over substance Hollow Knight, or the tedious waste of 11 years development time Owlboy. I hasten to add that as these games are very popular they obviously have merit that is unfortunately wasted on me, that's a callback, but I cannot understand the appeal of Hollow Knight in particular. It's an ugly thing with extremely poor conveyance that seems to coast on its fastidious aping of other superior games. And that's without even taking into account the fetishism of difficulty that infects modern indie games, something that has evolved from the meme that Dark Souls is a throwback to the games of our youth. No mate, Dark Souls is modern as shit. Excessively difficult old games were usually that way because they sucked. I beat Dark Souls in relatively short order, but I've never cleared level 1 of Tomb Raider 3 because it's an obtuse nightmare of precision. You know, I saw a game called Top Hat on Steam that looked vaguely appealing, but the product description was like, remember when games were actually hard? Yeah mate, because there was no battery backup, because the collision detection was screwy, because I didn't finish making it. I don't miss it, mate. What's your point, Stu? I pretend to hear you cry. Well, there is no point. I have no solutions. If I had solutions, I'd be trying to break into the industry to make games instead of producing a YouTube show almost nobody watches. I suppose I'm tired of seeing game difficulty held up as the example of what it means to be an old school game, when the games I played as a child were largely pitifully short and easy. It bums me out that when a really excellent retro-style game like Cursed Castilla or Volgar the Viking comes out, titles absolutely nail the feel of a real classic game, they get largely overlooked in favour of meandering toss like Axiom Verge, I guess because people just like being reminded of Super Metroid. Now, I love indie games, obviously there are very big exceptions. Shovel Knight has been the game of the year for about 3 years now. Underdogs like Bleed and its sequel, Rex Rocket and Letterquest have brought me immense joy, but I just want to see things get a little bit more diverse and interesting within that relatively mainstream indie game space. Obviously I could turn to itch.io, Ink Repair, Kitty Horror Show, all manner of more hobbyist game designers if I wanted to dig deep, but it would be nice to scroll down the list of indies on PS4 and see something intriguing that doesn't include the descriptors with roguelike elements, old school difficulty or Metroidvania.
He's gonna play the video games. He doesn't like the video games. He's a furious video games man.
The Nintendo Switch has no games.
Patreon supporter Lewis Clark of SegaDriven.com, thanks, has asked me to cover my 5 favourite video games based on cartoons. That's a tall order for someone like me who plays a lot of games based on animation, but I've given it a go. I try to steer clear of the super obvious stuff like Turtles in Time, which everyone knows is amazing, and also I still hate ranking things out of 5, so this time it's going to be 5 seminal pop-punk albums. Smash by The Offspring. Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure is a superb Mega Drive jumperama that once you get used to the slightly odd player control is an absolute treat. Loads of levels, loads of secrets, great graphics and sound, there's nothing to reasonably fault it on. As far as I'm concerned it's a classic and should be played by everyone who likes leaping. Punkin' Drublick by NoFX. Bucky O'Hare for NES is mostly just rock hard to be honest. It's a great game if you don't mind dying a lot. It's brilliantly made with constant good ideas, it's got passwords so it's not completely insurmountable. It's got a lovely colour palette that's really vivid and makes it stand out in the NES library. Multiple playable characters, but again I stress, it really is hard. Battletoads hard. Dookie by Green Day. Biker Mice from Mars for SNES, an isometric racer, is a bit of a hidden gem. You chug around many different courses, upgrade your bike between races like Road Rash, it's all good. The best thing about it though is it's full what they call campaign co-op, but the actual best thing about it is that the PAL version is obsessed with Snickers. Seriously, everything is Snickers. It's hilarious. Enema of the State by Blink-182. Wacky Races for NES cast you as the irrepressible cartoon dog Muttley as he journeys through myriad side-scrolling levels to find his master Richard Dastardly. It's very good looking for a NES game with clean, crisp graphics, and it has an interesting Gradius-esque power-up bar sort of thing going on. It struck me as one of those games that on its Japanese release was actually something else, and it got localized into Wacky Races, but apparently not. Apparently the Japanese just love Wacky Races. As well they should. From Under the Cork Tree by Fallout Boy. Yogi Bear for ZX Spectrum is fairly meandering, slow-paced, and a bit of a walkabout like so many Specky games, but I played it as a kid so I've got a soft spot for it. You've got to explore Jellystone Park collecting, for some reason, toffee apples. It's easiest if you draw a map as the place can be pretty confusing, with caves warping you around this way and that. It's stuff like Yogi Bear that, while I'm fond of it, makes me understand why Americans just don't seem to have a second of patience for the microcomputer game style. Like, I understand you guys, it's fine. Hi, is that TT Fusion?
It's Stuart Jam. Are you sitting down? Good. I've got a killer idea for your studio. Ready? Okay, you know that Lego Star Wars thing you've been making about, 9 of? Well, there's a new Star Wars movie by J.J. Abrams, and it's called The Force Awakens. I'll tell you where I'm going with this. I think you should make a Lego of it. Yeah, no, just put me in a special thanks or something. No, I'm not bothered. I'm sure the Patreon will pick up soon, don't worry. Alright, yeah, alright. Bye.
One of the most frequently debated questions in gaming is the deeply nebulous, what is the best gaming platform, console, handheld, whatever. Given this is episode 1 and I feel like I should start with a bang, I've decided to answer this question with complete definitive finality. Taking into account what constitutes a good platform really is a matter of two basic things. First of all, the library of games available for the system. It's not absolutely fundamental that a good games library is a big games library. While there's something to be said for quantity, the more titles are available for a system, the more likely that there's a lot of lesser quality getting released. Of course, these games can be simply ignored in favour of the masterpieces, but that would be too selective and ignorant of the premise here, which is to establish once and for all what is the best gaming machine. Secondly, of course, is hardware. While plentiful options are welcome and definitely count for something, the purity of a gaming exclusive console is very appealing indeed. It's a fine balance between ease of use and proliferation of extra features, and some newer systems can get a little clunky of the interface as a result of putting their fingers in too many pies. Having considered these fundamental building blocks, I've come to an immediate conclusion. The finest gaming device ever created is this incredibly hooky Super 118-in-1 keyring that I got off of the market when I was 8 years old. Software-wise, it's impossible to fault. While it only plays Tetris and a sort of top-down car-dodging game, they're both perfect in form and function with responsive controls and very clear objectives. In terms of hardware, it's also pretty much unassailable. It does exactly what it's supposed to, which is to offer 118 incredibly slight variations on the aforementioned two games. That's a lot of bang for your buck. And this purity of purpose, in addition to flawless hardware, means that the Super 118-in-1 is by far the best gaming platform of all time. This one doesn't actually work, but that's hardly a mark against it.
Hello, hi, I'm Stuart Jipp. Thank you for watching Stuart Jam. I just wanted to sort of face-to-face tell you personally thank you for supporting me. If you've been waiting for this show a long time, because I know it's been a long time coming, I want to thank you especially for your patience, and I hope you enjoyed the show. This is just a sort of transitional video world to Stuart Jam episode, so a lot of the more sort of new stuff is going to come in the next one, which won't take as long as this, hopefully. Now, I didn't want to do this without a big exclusive scoop for episode 1. So I pulled a few strings. That's what that is. That's pulling strings, not like milking a cow or something much worse. And I was able to secure the thumb drive that allegedly contained unconventional pornography. So I put it into my computer, and it's bad. I mean, I only looked at the thumbnails, but sometimes that's enough. That's all you need to see. I double-clicked a couple of the pictures and sort of full screen them, but you have to know. You can't make accusations like this without. Well, no, sometimes a thumbnail looks like it's something bad, and it turns out it's okay. So I had to open a couple of them. Yeah, it's all true, unfortunately. It's really a really bad look for that particular executive. Oh, hang on, I better go and get the door. Yep. Okay. Yep. That stands to reason. I'll come quietly. Let me just tell the. Yeah. There's not going to be any more episodes because I've just been arrested. So. Bye.
Hi friends, hope you like the show. I'm not going to fill your screen with clickables because I don't know how to fucking do that. It seems hard. But if you do want to, if you did love it, if you even sort of liked it, or if you hated it but you want to pay me to go away, then if you look under the video, you'll see a link to various ways that you can help. There's the Patreon, which is patreon.com/StuartJip, and there's also a Ko-fi and a direct PayPal. Sharing the video and liking the video and subscribing also helps. So if you could do those things, I'll be your friend forever. And if you're ever around, I'll cook you some eggs or something. All right, thanks. See you next time.